Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over an introduction for the SAT and PSAT. This is going to be part of my set of review videos for the SAT and PSAT. I'm doing both together because both exams do have the same structure. It got modified in 2024 for the digital SAT and digital PSAT. So therefore, all review for the SAT and PSAT is going to happen together. So this is the introduction video. We're going to have a video on the reading and writing section, as well as videos on the content areas for the math section. So that's the schedule to look forward to for the SAT and PSAT review videos. But let's first go over the breakdown of the SAT and PSAT exams. This breakdown works for all versions of the SAT and PSAT, so including PSAT 8-9, PSAT 10, PSAT NMSQT, and the SAT. You have two sections on this exam, reading and writing and math, and each section is divided into two modules. For reading and writing, each module is 27 questions in 32 minutes, so you have slightly more time than the questions that you need to answer. So in total, it's 54 questions in 64 minutes. And for math, you have 22 questions in 35 minutes, so a bit more time compared to the number of questions you have to answer, and that's 44 questions in 70 minutes total because you'd multiply the questions in minutes by 2, since there's two modules. In total, if you were to add them together, 98 questions in total on either the SAT or PSAT to be done in a little over 2 hours. So it's a lot shorter and has less questions than the other paper and pencil SAT and PSAT. Just a side note, I did get a 1560 on my SAT and a 1470 on my PSAT when we were doing the older paper and pencil SAT and PSAT. But now it's changed since it's now online. Probably the biggest change to these exams, the second module is adaptive based on your first module performance, meaning you're going to have the first module for each section, and depending on how well you do on the first module, it will determine what kind of a second module you get. If you'll get a harder one, meaning you probably did better in the first module, like you did pretty good, or if it's still easier questions in the second module, you probably didn't do as well in the first module as you could have. All right. So let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to quickly talk about the National Merit Scholarship, which is part of the NMSQT program. National Merit Scholarship Corporation is the one that has the scholarship. It's offered only to juniors who take the PSAT NMSQT. So basically, you'll take the PSAT NMSQT in your junior year, and then when you get your score back, you need to have a high selection index, so you want to do as well as possible on the PSAT NMSQT. And depending on what state you're residing in, there's a certain cutoff score for your selection index. It ranges from 48 to 228. And you want to have a higher higher selection index than the cutoff to become a semifinalist for that state. You can just search up online semifinalist cutoffs for national merit for the upcoming class, and you'll be able to see for your class what are the cutoffs for each state. So about 16,000 students become semifinalists, and I believe 34,000 become commended, which means they are above. There's a national commended index. So if you're above that index but below your semifinalist index for your particular state, you'll get a commended letter. But if you're a semifinalist, 16,000 of those every year, you have to do an application to become a finalist. I actually was a national merit finalist, so I was one of 15,000 students to be a national merit finalist. And for your semifinalist application, you just have to enter some more like personal information about yourself and then list some awards and do an essay. And then from the 15,000 finalists, 2,500 scholars are chosen to get a $2,500 scholarship. So that's kind of the process of the National Merit Scholarship. It's only for juniors who take the PSAT and MSQT. So if you're taking PSAT 10 or PSAT 8-9, that's not for you, but it's good practice so that way you can do the best that you can on the PSAT and MSQT. All right, so we're going to go over the reading and writing section just in terms of like a general overview of it. Obviously, we're going to have a video on it later that goes more to depth in the type of questions and practice. But specifically, what is a reading and writing section test? It's mainly reading comprehension and writing skills. You have a short passage for every question. This is a big difference. In the older SAT, you'd have like a long passage and you'd have to answer like 10 questions for each passage. And even in the writing section, you'd have to answer like 11 questions per passage. Here, it's a short little passage, about like a paragraph or maybe a little longer for each question. 25 to 150 words approximately, and all the questions are multiple choice. So how do the modules differ in the reading and writing section? Like I mentioned earlier, you could have a harder module for your second module if you did pretty good on the first module. So in the harder module, you're going to see like more reading. So there's going to be more text. The subject matter is going to be a little tougher to understand. You're going to have harder questions to answer, and they're going to be worded in a way that's a little harder to understand. And the final bullet point, that's a little bit of a rough estimate, but you want at least around a 70% accuracy in your first module to get the harder module. Again, it's not a established number, but really you should do as good as you can on the first module because you want to get that harder module to get a top score in that section. So here's an example of an easier module. This is what I mean. You have just about a paragraph here and then a question, and then a small paragraph here for your writing question, and then you'd be like substituting in a word here. And then here's an example of a harder module. See, you have actually paired passages, but you have more text and you have to consider two viewpoints before answering the question. And then here you have a longer paragraph and more difficult words to substitute in than you would in the easier module. So that's kind of the difference. It's just a little bit harder in the harder module, but I fully believe once we go over all the questions and strategies and do practice, that you all will still be able to do well on this section, even if you get the harder module, which is what we want. All right, then the math section, a brief overview of it. It's testing all your math through Algebra 2. So like Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, all those math concepts. You're allowed a calculator for the entire section. You're also being tested on like probability and statistics, by the way. You're allowed to use a calculator for the entire section. There's also going to be Desmos graphing calculator embedded into Blue Book, which is where you're going to be doing the test. So you can use that as well. The math section is about 3/4 multiple choice and 1/4 free response. Free response meaning you kind of like type in your answer. It's not like an AP exam free response thing. It's not like that. So how do the harder modules differ in math? You might have to recall more formulas, solve tougher math problems, and you're going to have more word problems. So you're going to have a lot more to read, and you're going to have to figure out what information from the word problem is important for you to answer the question that they're asking. This is very important. And again, you probably want around a 70% accuracy at the bare minimum in your first module to get a harder module. Obviously, try to shoot for better than that if possible. So here's an example of an easier module. These are all like really simple questions. This is just a simple percentage question, one-step equations, functions, and then probability. So these are questions that you should be answering relatively quickly. Obviously, you do have more time than questions, but if you run into a couple harder ones later in the module, then you want to save time for that as well. Here's a harder module. So you see you're dealing with like diameter of a circle, exponential functions, another exponential function one. So the topics, and you see the question is longer here. There's more words to read. So that's kind of the difference between the easier and harder modules. Again, I feel like this is probably the easiest version of the SAT, like how it's ever been before, especially compared to the paper and pencil one that was just discontinued last year. So I feel like you guys can still get an amazing score on both sections after you just go through and kind of understand the content for both reading and writing and math. And I promise my videos are going to go through all of that on those sections. So then test day and scoring. What are you going to bring on test day? You want your fully charged testing device with the Blue Book app already installed from the College Board website and the exam setup completed. So there's going to be some steps that you're going to have to do on Blue Book to make sure that you're ready to go for test day. So make sure you do that ahead of time. Make sure to have your admissions ticket. I think they'll allow it electronically, but if possible, try to print it out. That's probably the easiest. Make sure to bring a photo ID so that way you can validate that it's you that's taking the test. That would be either like a driver's license or a student ID from your school. You can bring pencils or pens for scratch work. For the math section, make sure to know your College Board username and password so you can log into Blue Book on the day of. You can have an acceptable calculator, and also I'd recommend you bring snacks to eat during your break. You're going to have a break in between reading and writing and math, and watches if needed. And try not to bring your cell phone if possible, unless you need to contact your parents or something to pick you up after the exam. So in terms of scoring, official scores take about 2 weeks to come out. For PSATs though, it comes out in December, so it's a little bit of a longer wait. You can have kind of a general idea of your score depending on how you do on the first module. And what I mean by this is the exam is designed that if you get an easier module for your second module, then the highest score you can get on that section is a 600. So this is very important, guys. Please do not try to not do well on the first module so that way you can get easier questions in the second module. That's actually a bad thing, because what's going to happen is you're going to be left with a max of 600 points in each section, which is going to be a 1200 out of 1600, which is not going to be good enough. I know that every single one of you guys can get a much, much better score than that. So please make sure that you're trying your hardest on the first module, so that way the second module, you have the best chance to get a really high score in each section. You can send your scores to up to 4 colleges for free before 9 days after the exam ends, so either before you take your exam or a couple days after, aka before scores come out. After that, there's a fee of $12 per college. Personally, in my opinion, unless you're really confident in how you did, I'd probably say hold off on sending scores to colleges until after you get your score. Yes, it's $12 per college, but it's worth it because you want to send the best score possible to colleges and not a mediocre score. All right, and then some general tips for you all. We're going to get into, more tips in the other sections when I go over reading and writing in the math sections. But general idea, you need to know your content. You need to know your grammar. You need to know your math. These are very important because you cannot wing those sections. Please make sure to pace yourself well. That means answer questions that you can answer quickly, but smartly, so that way you're not rushing, and make sure that you're not also taking too much time on certain questions. You want to make sure that you're finishing at a good pace, so that way on test day, you're not feeling rushed or you're going too fast and you're missing questions. We don't want either of those to happen. Please make sure to take lots of practice tests. That's going to help you the most in terms of understanding how it's going to be on test day. I'd honestly suggest that you should kind of do almost simulate a test day. So start at 8 o'clock and go through the motions of what you'd be doing on test day. You're going to feel the most comfortable on test day if you do that. Use test taking strategies when needed. So process of elimination, trusting your gut, trusting your instinct. It's very important, guys, because more often than not, your first answer that you think is right is the correct answer. And we don't want to change answers unless we're 100% sure our answer is wrong. And the bottom two are probably the most important tips. Please do not stress on test day, and please be confident in yourself, guys. I cannot emphasize this enough. Yes, the SAT is important for college, but it's not an end-all be-all thing. You have to have other parts of your application, like extracurriculars, classes, stuff like that, to truly have a good profile for college. Obviously, the SAT is important, but please do not stress about it. If you stress, you're not going to do as well as you can. So I want you guys to just be calm, work through the motions, take each question one at a time, and don't worry about previous modules and previous sections as you're working through the test. And then when your score comes out, hopefully you guys do really, really well. So that's all for this introduction video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I truly believe that every single person here can do really well on the SAT. I'm talking 1,500 plus scores out of 1,600, because I feel like it's much easier now, and you guys just need to make sure that you understand the content and you're confident for test day. And you guys are going to do amazing on the SAT and the PSAT. So thank you guys so much for watching again. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to let me know. And I will see you all in the next video.